First and foremost, a big thank you to all of you for showing up here. My name is Ray Manahan, and I'm a proud member of the City of Issaquah Equity Board. And we, along with the Garage and the Human Resources Department of the city, are kind of the three co-sponsors for the event. The three organizations are sponsoring it. So I want to make sure I do proper introductions of the folks that help us put this together before I get to our wonderful panelists here. So just to call out, first of all, Kaylee H., she's executive director standing back there at the Garage. If you haven't met her, she gave us the okay to have this at this wonderful location. So thank you, Kaylee. And for my kind of colleague within the city, we have Hannah Roberts from the Human Services Department of the city. Thank you for helping me put this together. We have folks from, we have council members, and the mayor sent me a note of thanks, and sorry she couldn't be here, but she is traveling, visiting our host city, so she's out of the country, but she wanted to make sure that she sends her warm welcome to everybody who's here as well. So thank you again for being here. I'm gonna just pause a moment and just go back to what I said earlier. This month, there's so much going on in June, right? When you think about it, I was thinking about that. You have, in addition to the wonderful Pride events, which happens throughout the whole month, we have things like graduation. We have finals. Let's not forget that. Our students who are in the midst of things. It's a pressure cooker for a lot of people with all the events that are going on. Juneteenth also happens, right? Another wonderful event. And we also have Father's Day for all the fellow fathers like myself. We have that to celebrate coming up. So many things happening in June, but that leads me to, again, to say thank you for being here and spending some time with us today. Let me get my clicker going. Oh, thank you. Okay. And I'm going to kind of do the facilitating, but it's not me who I want to do most of this talking. It's my wonderful panelists here. So last year we had an event too. Excuse me one second. Be careful, don't trip on that. There's water underneath the chairs. Kaylee was nice enough to give us all that. We had some return presenters from last year, and we also have a couple new presenters here. But what was really important for me is to just hear a lot of voices when it comes to the topic of pride, because I think perspectives are really key when we talk about the subject. So we have folks from different organizations. I'm going to have them make sure they pass the mic accordingly. We have two mics. I'll share mine with the folks on this end, and the folks in the end can share that mic. But I'm going to tee them up, and I'm going to get the slide deck ready. This is our only reference to it, but first, if anybody wants copies of this, there's nothing private that's on here. So if anybody wants references to this, because they helped me put it together, so I'm going to kind of use this as a guide. So again, with our event sponsors, the City of Issaquah and the Garage, thank you for letting us host this event. But these are the panelists that we have, these wonderful organizations. And I have to say, in preparation for this, I got to spend some time with them last month to really just sit down and get to know one another. And I had a blast with all of you, just so you know. So thanks for making the trek out here, for spending some time with me to let us all get to know each other, share personal and professional perspectives on things on this important topic. So I wanted to say thank you to our panelists. Let me start. So we have Pride Across the Bridge, and at the far end, we have the leaders of that organization. And I'm just going to have them, Morgan, why don't we start with you and have you introduce and share a little bit about yourself with the group.
Sure. So my name is Morgan Witten. I'm one of the board members with Pride Across the Bridge. And it's my great honor to be here, so thank you very much. We basically facilitate events along all over the east side, and it started with, Seattle has the lion's share of like resources and events, and so it was kind of started a while back for the desire to have them on the east side. And so I'm one of the board members, and I also help with all the IT and stuff like that.
Hello, my name is James Webster. I'm the vice chair of Pride Across the Bridge and co-founder with Axton. I run specifically our D&D groups and help organize and facilitate those, because I think playing pretend and embracing your inner child and experiencing joy with a bunch of people is a very healing thing, and it's also just a lot of fun. But beyond that, I also help the organization and volunteer at events.
My name is Axton Burton. I use they, them pronouns. I am the executive director of Pride Across the Bridge, which works hard to change the narrative that our community only exists with its support solely in Seattle, when we have so many different hidden gems over here, whether it's medical providers, whether it is safe schools. Our community exists outside of Seattle and deserves support at home.
Can everyone hear us? I can't. Okay, just
Okay.
a little bit louder. Just touch that. Okay, thank you.
How am I connected to you? I'm going to let them introduce themselves first.
Hi, I'm Casey. I am a Saga Club member at Issaquah High School. I am the social media coordinator, and I am very excited to be here. This is exciting. What our club does is we create a safe space for the students at Issaquah High School and Issaquah Middle School. We talk to them as well. We run a lot of donation booths. We have learning nights where we teach about Issaquah Pride history for not just Issaquah, but across the U.S. and in other countries as well.
Hi, my name is Summer Heacock. I am an author and a stay-at-home mom, and I have one of my actual gave birth to them children here, and I am here for Caden, who sort of became my adopted child through, I'm not sure how to explain that because I don't want to like tell your story. I adopted him and I call him my wonderful murder goldfish son for no reason whatsoever. But I am here to give perspectives on what it was like taking folks like Caden under my wing, and then also having my own children that are going through different, I don't know how to say this, I'm sorry, who identify differently. And I have a son in middle school, and my daughter is a junior. And then yeah, that I didn't want to out just in case, but yes, raising a queer daughter and having my queer goldfish son. So, thank you. That was awkward. Here you go.
My name is Brandon Knox. I'm the program director at the Lambert House LGBTQ Youth Center. We have a drop-in center in Capitol Hill, Seattle. We also have 4, soon to be 5 groups in different communities across King County, and have outdoor events across King County and online programs that serve youth across the United States. And we're all about helping LGBTQ youth come together, make friends, providing support and celebration. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Elisa Barnett. My pronouns are she and they, and I am the Programs and Services Director at GenPride. GenPride serves specifically LGBT seniors. We have the first LGBT senior community center in all of the Pacific Northwest in Capitol Hill on Broadway. It's super exciting, especially because Pride Across the Bridge are like partners in crime and making sure that our LGBT seniors get services over on this side as well. I, in particular, have a background in behavioral health, in workforce development and training, and then also in overseeing senior programming at an LGBT center. So for me, this is really an opportunity to bring all of those things together. We provide community training, both for providers and community groups. We also do sort of 101 kinds of things on what GenPride is, the services that we offer. And as I tell my staff all the time, we will go anywhere we're invited. So if you know seniors out there who could use our services, or if you're part of an organization that would like to know more about how to best serve LGBT seniors, let us know. We're here for you.
Thank you, panelists. Okay, so before we dive into it, I had asked the panelists what would be good topics to touch on that will spur some good dialogue, because I don't want us to do all the talking. We want you to have an opportunity to ask questions. So some questions can be sensitive. So if there's a need for anonymity, I'm going to ask that we put a bowl in the back with maybe some pieces of scratch paper. If for some reason you don't want to ask the question out loud, I encourage you to write your question in the board, and I'll go back to it and be sure that we bring that question forward to the panelists. But if you're okay with asking the question yourself, I'm going to walk over to you, and because I don't think this mic can get very far, but I'm going to make sure your question is heard. So you have those two options as far as asking questions. Sound okay? All right. So I haven't been following my slide deck, so just I just jumped right into it. So each of us put a slide together to share a little bit about ourselves, but this was mine. Again, I'm a proud member of the Equity Board. So kudos to our mayor and our council members and our city here in Issaquah to even creating an equity board. So we've been in existence since, I think it was Q4 2021, really taking the first few years to really be educated by different departments across the city, understand what's going on with them, but they wanted to, as far as diversity, equity, and inclusion, have somebody listening into their strategy. As they start to move forward in subsequent years, they wanted to make sure there was an equity lens. So I, for one, and I always speak to the board members where we have that opportunity to just raise our hand and say, wait a minute, in your planning for the subsequent years, did you not think of this as far as DEI topics? So we're grateful to have that voice heard with the commissions. I live right up here in Cougar Mountain. I have a husband. We've been together for, oh my gosh, 20 plus years. We have one daughter, and she is a junior here in Issaquah High School, and they would both be here, but she's in the middle of a basketball tournament, so I apologize for that. That takes up a lot of her time. My background is in healthcare. I've worked for some pretty large organizations as a consultant, but I've worked directly for them as well. So that's me. Again, for Q&A, break for questions. I'm going to make sure to just pause and say, does anybody have any questions? So you have the opportunity to ask them. But again, for anonymity's sake, if you have something that you just want to ask, just write it down on a piece of paper, and I'll get to it. So one of the things, as you can see when our panelists started to share the work that they do, there's covering a timeline, isn't there? We have somebody who's aware of what's going on with the senior population in the LGBTQ community. We have somebody that's aware of what's going on from a millennial perspective in the LGBTQ community. So I want to capture all of those, but this, I think, really captures it. So if we think about, I'm so proud of myself for this slide, I have to say, as we go through it. The transitions and everything. So this is kind of name that generation. If I had a different career, you know what it would be? It's not what healthcare. I've always loved history, and I think back to, you might see me wandering the streets. I'm walking my dog with my earphones on because I'm just listening to a podcast. It's probably history that I'm educating myself on. So I'm going to start us off, but I'm just curious if anybody else knows this. So there's names for each generation. So when you talk about like way in 1880 to 1899, it was called the Lost Generation. Anybody, raise your hand. What was the generation that followed the Lost Generation? So we're talking 1900 and 1925. Anybody know what that was?
Boomers.
What's?
No, silent generation, silent generation.
Okay, nice. See?
That is great.
No,
I
you're wrong though. It's called the Greatest Generation.
It's not the silent.
No, this is the silent generation right there.
Sorry, that was my parents. I get them confused.
Okay, so 1926, 1945, the silent generation. Does anybody know this generation? I hope a lot of us know. We just have to be reminded. What's that? I can't hear you.
Baby boomers.
Yes, it was called the baby boomers generation, right? What about this one? Generation. The best generation. Yes. Okay, now we know which age group you belong in. And that's where I am too, so good. What about this?
Millennials.
What? Both.
Yeah, we're the
Generation Y and millennials, right? So it's good. What about this one? If you were born in this... Yes. Who said Gen Z? Okay. All right, last one. And I'm curious where it goes from here. So we're now talking current day. Alpha. So does anybody know, how did we end up with this naming pattern? So I suspect it's going to be BC, et cetera, as we move on, right, from alpha. But X, Y, Z, alpha, beta, et cetera, moving forward. So as you look at these and the events that were happening on, and I put these here because this is me when I think about what's going on in these generations. There were some pretty big milestones, but you think about from a social perspective, from a historical perspective, what was going on. So all of us know what occurs in history and how that might impact us individually. So this is kind of a broad perspective on things. So you think about these, and there were some pretty big events, drivers of communication, how we communicate with one another. These are all there, right? But one thing I wanted to call out is, and I highlighted them, while all this was going on, what was the impact to our population? What was going on with the LGBTQ population? And things that were important to us. But I'm going to pause with my panelists and just ask them before I get started from a historical perspective. Let me call out this one because I had to confirm the dates. So I remember when that legislation came out. So it was legalizing same-sex marriage. And of course, the state of Washington always seems ahead of the game. I'm so proud to be part of the state because they legalized same-sex marriage ahead of the national legislation to legalize same-sex marriage. So 2012 was when it occurred in Washington state. And I remember when the Supreme Court announced legal same-sex marriages or unions, and that was in 2015. So there was a 3-year discrepancy between what was going on locally and what was going on nationally. This is interesting. Look at the growth, what's going on of our population. So we got to think about those things too as far as growth. Are we understanding what's going on, et cetera? Yes, we have a question.
I'm Claire,
Hi, Claire.
and I'm learning something here today. I love history too, and I didn't realize that the first, it's really small, but the first HIV case was so early during the silent generation. I really, that's not something I associate
thank you.
with that.
I found this online too. So it was not, I referenced that because I think we all were not exposed, but were educated about HIV when it landed in the United States, but it was happening in Africa way beforehand. And it arrived in the United States, we're talking about 1980s, et cetera. Yes, please.
When it aids the education because it was blowing up in the 80s, I grew up next to Ryan White.
Oh.
I actually played softball with his sister, and I was the same age, and just watching what happened. Oh, I'm going to try not to cry. Sorry, it was just a lot back then of just the horrible things that were said to this kid that had always been friends with. We would make forts with while we were waiting for our game during baseball tournaments and softball tournaments, and then the protests and Elton John just rolling up, half a mile from my house. And
Can you? I'm going to pause a moment. Does everybody know who Ryan White was? Okay, could you explain to them who he was?
Ryan White, and I'm not going to explain this well because the memories of me is like a 10 or 12-year-old. Ryan White was a boy who contracted HIV through a blood transfusion, and it was a very big deal because up until then it was being heavily promoted. I'm going to say, yay, Reagan, heavily promoted as just something that affected gay men. And so for this child to get it through a medical procedure, it just threw such a wrench into that whole narrative. And he became this ground zero for the expansive education that started to come from the realities of what the disease was. He led to so much knowledge and further acceptance, but also lines in the sand of people saying, look at this poor child who got this because of the evil gays. And, I mean, at the time, I'm also queer myself, and I felt so strangled because I grew up in this teeny tiny Indiana town that, I mean, we don't even have stoplights still to this day, but it was about as red state as you can possibly get.
Yeah.
And so it was a crazy time. I didn't say crazy, but a wild time.
Thank you for sharing that. I think the Ryan White narrative is really key because what that did is exposed it as something that was not only impacting a specific community like the LGBTQ community, it also impacted children, straight people. So it was not a disease that was unique to one given population. It certainly impacted you in all populations if it was not, if we didn't get control of it. Okay, so that's my proud slide. So the one, I'm just gonna move from one organization to the next, but I hope you saw why I put this up there because it was really important to get the perspectives of what's going on with our community from a generational perspective. So going back to my panelists, and I'm gonna start with Elisa. when you think about what's going on with the aging LGBTQ population, what are some of their needs? What are some of the struggles? What are some of their successes here? So GenPride, if you were not aware, as she mentioned, is focused on the seniors who are LGBTQ. They do wonderful things. There's a housing complex that they've been very focused on the past few years in the Capitol Hill area. But I'm just going to hand over the mic to her. I don't know if you can all read this, but what I'm going to do, because you guys helped me put these slides together, this is really tiny. But at least you have it for reference, because this is so far off from you. So I'm going to let you just talk through a few things.
Hi, everyone. I'm here because I love old people, and I want to be one day. So there you go. That's me in a nutshell. So just talking about our seniors and the needs that LGBT seniors have in particular. There's a few things that a lot of people aren't aware of, and that's the frequency with which LGBT seniors go back into the closet as they age. We find that especially when folks are changing their residential situation, so whether that means that they're going into skilled nursing or a retirement community or even just a senior apartment complex, they don't necessarily know how safe they are with their neighbors, and oftentimes they will go back into the closet. And for the generation of folks who made it possible for me to sit up here and talk about having a wife without being afraid of, I work with a bunch of queers, but I'm not afraid of losing my job, and I wasn't even before that these are the folks who are now losing their ability and the safety and security to be able to be themselves is grossly unfair. Those of us who do this work spend a lot of time being incredibly frustrated. There's not a lot of attention paid to seniors in general in the U.S. In the LGBT community, we are incredibly youth and beauty focused. And so for seniors, they get sidelined. They become invisible. And then when they go back into the closet, they cease to exist. The number of folks who I have spoken to who are genuinely surprised that there are old gay people is wild. And as I remind folks, we don't stop being gay just because we get older. That's just the reality of it. And I think in our society, there's a lot of this sense that the only people who get to be part of the LGBT community are young and beautiful and out being really out there, and there's not necessarily a space for the quiet of being with your partner for 50 years, right? Or the joy in being 100% aware of who you are, and you don't care what anybody says anymore, unless it involves your safety. GenPride services start at age 50, which infuriates a lot of people because they're like, 50 is not a senior age, 50 is not old. And the reality is, for LGBT folks, 50 actually is kind of old. There's historical health discrepancies. There's discrimination, lack of access to services. When we add the intersectionality of folks who are also people of color, they age, LGBT seniors age so much more rapidly than the broader population. So someone who is, say, a trans person of color, who has never been able to build up historical wealth, who hasn't been able to have consistent health care, who has been discriminated against, who hasn't had consistent employment because of discrimination, at age 50 is going to be much older than the person who has had privilege all along the way at age 50. So when I talk about getting old and I say I want to be an old person, it's because within our community, aging is aspirational. It is something we all hope to get to. When we look at the number of people we lost to the AIDS crisis, just take a moment, think about that. There is an entire generation of folks who should be here right now and who never got to get old. Never happened for them. And there are still people every day in our community who are part of the LGBT community who won't get old. When we look at how frequently trans women of color are murdered in the US, that's one more person who will never come to GenPride because they don't get to be old. When I look at the way that people don't get proper health care, lesbians are some of the least likely people to go and see a general practitioner just for basic medical care. So think of all the health screenings they're not getting. Think of all the services they don't receive. Think of how much sooner their lives end because they couldn't get that care when they were middle-aged. I'm 43, and there are still people who are impressed that I'm this old as a brown queer person. That is utterly infuriating. And I get to work every day with some of the most incredible human beings on the planet. If you are looking to connect to our community, come by the GenPride Center. It is full of such joy and such life. And these are the folks who got us here, right? And these are the folks who are going to keep us going. If you want to get asked a hard question, walk up to an old gay person, right? They're not going to let it slide. They want to know what you're doing and what you're thinking and how do you justify that? And I love it, right? Like that's who I want to be when I grow up. A number that most people don't realize is that there are this is just our rough estimate. This is an old number. It's from about 2015. There are 26,000 LGBT seniors in King County. We are the first LGBT senior community center in King County. We're the first one in the entire Pacific Northwest. We're on the first floor of the very first LGBT senior affirming apartment complex in the entire Pacific Northwest. Thank you to the ringer in the back row. And while that's so exciting, I had an amazing conversation with someone yesterday who's like, so when are you planning your next building? And I say, they started planning this building in 1987.
Wow.
It shouldn't have taken that long, right? And so these are conversations that working at an organization focused on seniors, we find ourselves having to push very frequently. So if I go to something that's targeted, toward the LGBT community, I have to convince them that seniors are important. And when I go to senior things, I have to convince them that LGBT people exist as seniors, right? And so you find yourself in this kind of funky bind where we're having to justify our existence no matter what side we're on. And so by having the opportunity to share this with all of you, my hope is that you're going to turn around and the next time you go someplace, one of the questions you're going to ask is, hey, do they have a hearing loop? So that folks who are hard of hearing can be a part of the conversation? Are they going to make sure that there's printed handouts so that people who need a visual assistance are going to get that? How's the accessibility to the building? Are there elevators? Is there a ramp? Right? How many bathrooms do they have? What kind of access is there to the bathroom? Right? All those kinds of things that are not exactly second nature, but which become second nature when you work with seniors for a long time, that's what I'm hoping will happen. Another part of the conversation that I had yesterday, I was talking, how many people here are familiar with Providence PACE? They're a senior wraparound program. The Providence healthcare system runs them. They are phenomenal. I was talking with their executive director yesterday. And he and I were talking about the fact that while we're the first LGBT affirming building, there is nothing that says that all those existing senior buildings can't become LGBT affirming. There's nothing that says that all the existing senior centers cannot make an effort to explicitly become LGBT affirming and welcoming, that they can't add programming, that they can't make sure that the LGBT seniors who are already in their community are welcome there. So for all of you, my big takeaway for all of you, I hope, is that you're going to go into the spaces that you're already a part of and ask, I wonder how LGBT seniors fare in this space. I wonder if they feel welcome. I wonder if they can get in. And then, how do we change it to make sure that happens? That's really what it's about. It's about the people in the community, not just GenPride coming in and being like, you need to change things. It's about the community members looking around and going, hey, wait, there are people from right here, right? Like Ray says, there are people from right in this area. Like all my wonderful colleagues over at Pride Across the Bridge, not just in Seattle, right? They shouldn't have to come to Seattle to be a part of community, to be in community. They should be able to find that right where they're at. And so that's what all of you have the power to do, right? And GenPride is here to provide technical assistance, to help with logistics, to do all those kinds of things. And all of you know your community best. The seniors know their own needs best, right? So that's really, GenPride is here to facilitate, to make things happen, and to advocate. And then also to throw the next big trend, watch out, is going to be rainbow karaoke. We're predicting it. We have it. Our first one's going to be happening at the Southeast Seattle Senior Center. And I'm looking forward to when we can make it happen on this side too. It's going to be so cool.
Thank you. I want to make sure we pause for questions because is there anything that Elisa shared that anybody has a question on? And we're going to return to the healthcare topic because I asked them to share with me some topics, and I have a slide on that where we're going to share some stats and get your feedback on them. So healthcare is a huge topic that we don't want to leave too quickly. Okay, I'm going to move us over. Sorry, I was holding the mic. Yes.
Can I have it handed to Axton so they can share their really cool thing that I get way too excited about?
Yeah, go ahead.
The breakfast? So we, as Pride Across the Bridge, have at least for a year and a half held the East Side's only Rainbow Elder Breakfast. This is a one-time-a-month thing that our elders have looked forward to be able to connect authentically with the community. A lot of what our events have is food. Food can really bring people together. We bounce around to different cities on the East Side. One of my favorites is North Bend Bar and Grill. They are fantastic. And finding a safe space for all of us to connect and to understand the successes and the hurdles of that generation. Some of the spaces that are created, like our Beyond Binary connections, are oftentimes filled with, as Elisa knows, just younger generations, queer youth who have so much power in education, but are fighting hurdles that a lot of our Rainbow Elders are like, oh, that was 40 years ago. Wonderful that you're on your mom and dad's health insurance. I have been on testosterone for 30 years now. I have a car and have their own independent hurdles and successes that need to be connected with. And so having that monthly space that is for that community to be able to, close to home always, connect, relate, is so critical, especially as our world polarizes further. To be able to have that space is a baseline of what our community needs close to home.
Thank you. And it's so wonderful to have an organization that's specifically focused on the needs of the East Side, right? We all know what's going on over in Seattle, but to know that organizations exist here on the East Side of the area is just fantastic. Okay, I'm going to move us along. You know what I hadn't been doing, guys, is I asked you guys to talk about this. You touched on a lot of these, I hope. But when I saw Brandon's slide, because I asked him to help me bring forward topics that if they weren't reminders of what's going on currently, especially with the demographics that he's going to focus on, this is a good slide to refer to that. We know, I don't know if, I would suspect most of you are aware of what's going on in the news, but I wanted to have Brandon touch on that a little bit. I'm sorry, did I jump over something?
That one?
Yep.
Yeah, if the very bottom, there's just Dr. Jason Flatt is a professor whose research is phenomenal, specifically into LGBT seniors, a ton of work into LGBT seniors and dementia, as well as LGBT seniors, dementia, and HIV. highly, highly recommend looking into his research. He's on LinkedIn, putting stuff up all the time. If this is something that you're curious about, definitely take a look at his work. You'll be just blown away by what's being done by him and his colleagues right now.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you, Lisa. Sorry about jumping around, but again, with the topics that we want to have each of them focus on, Brandon put this one together. I know it's not we're aware of what's going on, but it's good to surface these things, at least for those who might not be aware of it. So I'm going to have him elaborate on some of these bullet points. Maybe just bring up some things forward that we can touch on.
Thanks, Ray. So one thing that I think is important to elevate is the violence that LGBTQ youth are experiencing in lots of spaces, and one of the places that youth spend a lot of time is school. I'm sure everybody's heard about the shooting at Garfield High School that unfortunately resulted in the death of a student. We have a bunch of students from Garfield that come to our drop-in center in Capitol Hill. We have a connecting bus line. A couple of years ago, there was another shooting at Ingram High School. We have students from Ingram High School. We have students from every school in the area. And in talking with some of them about these incidents, they've sort of resigned themselves to this kind of violence at their schools, which is really troubling and really sad and really heartbreaking. And then layer on top of that the violence that LGBTQ youth specifically experience. Name calling, bullying, hearing words that describe their identity used in derogatory ways, finding lack of support in their schools. Maybe there's one or two teachers that they're like, oh, I can go to that adult that I see for a few minutes every day, and not really sure who else in the school is there to support them. Luckily at Lambert House, we get to create space where LGBTQ youth are together and they feel safe and they're supported, and we celebrate them. And most of the time, we get to have really joyous, celebratory space. But these things youth are dealing with every single day. And, to me, I feel like we should be doing better for our young people, that they should feel safe at school, that they should feel safe in their neighborhoods, in their homes, in the faith communities that their families are a part of. It shouldn't take a space like Lambert House being the only space where some youth feel safe, or one of maybe a couple of spaces where they feel safe. When youth come to Lambert House, just to zoom out a little bit, over 90% of youth tell us their number one goal is to make friends, or find friends, or get friends. And that tells me that maybe the number one challenge LGBTQ youth are still experiencing is social isolation, right? Lambert House was founded by a gay pediatrician who is a director at the University of Washington, and his whole goal for the organization was to improve health outcomes through social support. That was in 1981. We're in 2024, and that is still the biggest need, and social connection, I think, is still one of the biggest solutions. We know that LGBTQ youth experience higher rates of suicide, addiction, homelessness, school failure, all terrible, tragic things affecting our community at higher rates. Luckily, the antidote is being together. It's creating community. It's supporting one another, and we get to do that every day. But hearing about the stories where it's not happening in all of these other places that it should be is really sad. And Lambert House has expanded beyond Seattle. Thanks to Best Starts for Kids, we have groups across King County, Lake Forest Park, North Bend, Covington, Federal Way, soon Auburn. And we have outdoor and recreation events across the county as well. We're doing Art in the Park in Woodinville in July, and we go hiking and go on nature walks on accessible trails in our beautiful suburban parks that we have all over the county. Lots of different ways that we bring youth together. One challenge, and maybe you could call it a silver lining with the pandemic, is that we launched online programming that made social support accessible to youth, not only in rural parts of our county and our state, but across the United States and around the world. We have connected with youth from 28 U.S. states and 10 other countries, many places where there is nothing in their communities, no GSAs in their schools, and in some places where it is intensely dangerous to be LGBT, where people are harmed physically and sometimes put to death. Our youth are dealing with a lot, and right now, I mean, coming out of the pandemic, having had 3 years or so where socializing was very different, we're excited to be putting on things like our Youth Pride Disco, a dance coming up next weekend, actually a week from today, to bring youth together and just have fun and let loose and have good food and great music and celebrate each other this time of year. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Any questions for Brandon? I wanted to go back to the slide. Was there anything on these bullet points with the wonderful services that you provided that you wanted to elaborate? I think you touched on all of them, but I just didn't want to skip over anything. So these are just some of the services that they provide. As you can see, it's very all-encompassing. So we're very fortunate to have Lambert House in the community and here with us. Okay. Any questions for Elisa or Brandon? Pause here for a moment for anybody. And again, with questions that you're not comfortable bringing forward, write them down in the bowl, and I'll get to them later. But you're welcome to ask in any venue you want. Yes, you have a question.
A question for Brendan.
Yeah.
Brendan, what do you think people could do to help out the best, or for GenPride? What do you think people that aren't queer that our allies could do that could help out the best? Is it like financial donations? Is it volunteering time? Is it just spreading the word? What do you think would be the best way community could get involved?
Sure. I would say we probably all need more money to do more of the work that we're doing. So thanks for elevating that. Lambert House does use a lot of volunteers. We have over 100 volunteers that facilitate our programs. We have a pretty small paid staff that allows us to do more, stretch our resources. It also gives our youth access to some really amazing role models, all of the adults that we have from different backgrounds and identities. And our volunteers span from 23 to 80. So we're a really great intergenerational community. So volunteering is another really wonderful way to support us. And telling queer youth that you know about us and encouraging them to check us out. Although, parents telling kids, oh, go to this place, that usually doesn't work. Just gently share the information and then let them make the decision that works better.
Same. I was going to say one of the things that I think it's worth pointing out is that GenPride is the senior center or the senior community center for all of Capitol Hill. So the way we put it is everyone who is a senior is welcome. Just don't expect us to take any of the rainbows down. That's just kind of how we roll. So we want volunteers of all ages. We are an itty-bitty nonprofit. Our budget is under $1 million, so we are sincerely looking for donations, please and thank you. And we are really a hidden gem. Most people don't know we exist, and we're very tired of being hidden. We would like to be mounted in a crown somewhere. So really appreciate this, Morgan, for this chance to just say, come by and visit. We have an amazing lunch program Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11:30 to 12:30. We have a brand new commercial kitchen. We just moved into our space in September. We didn't get tables for the community room until January, so we started the hot meal program in February. We're really kicking along. But because we have this brand new commercial kitchen, we have a partnership with Sound Generations, who does amazing work with seniors, and we have a chef who comes every Tuesday and Thursday and cooks these lunches. And there are already several where I was, as soon as I see it on the menu, I'm like, well, I'm not taking my lunch today. I know what I'm getting. So we really just come down and have lunch. It's a good time to just be with people.
Thank you.
Right. Where do I find details on this Pride disco?
I brought flyers. They're on the table right there. That flyer was designed by our youth committee who's planning the event.
Maybe your website too?
Yes, lamberthouse.org. Thanks, Morgan.
She's got the QR code going and everything. That's my daughter, by the way.
Speaking of QR codes, I'm going to nudge us along a little bit. I have your slide up, which maybe you could just start off with this book. What's in it? Get us curious on.
You wrote the book.
Why, when the author is sitting right there?
I just have too much to say on it. So the Big Book of All Things Queer was birthed out of, I was born and raised in Duval, which to me is still cow patty town. I love it, I appreciate it, it is growing. But growing up, I was the first gender non-conforming person, and that was difficult. Not having the terminology to identify until I was a senior is pathetic. Knowing what gay was as a word my sophomore year in high school, and that's not just a rude word you call people, is very depressing. So growing up, I started the Cedar Crest High School GSA in 2012, was the president for a year and a half, and then graduated, and then students continually kept asking me about medical professionals. So I evolved into this little tiny 1-2-page pamphlet that shared about all of the medical professionals that I had seen that I feel were safe to send people to. My partner here of 11 years, James, unfortunately with the trauma that comes with going through any kind of doctor, psychiatrist, primary care, gynecologist, he had to join me because of the constant, blatant discrimination that I had. And there had to be someone else there to witness. It was damaging. So knowing that queer youth, especially in the Valley, did not have any direct sources was how this book was created. So especially, and it may be a TMI, but I think that it is an honest thing. My partner and I live in Redmond, which is a comfortable distance from Duval to support and cause some good trouble, and also my parents. And the provider that I had to run down at 2:14 p.m., the only school bus out, not only bus, public bus out of Duval right after school, paid out of pocket to see this provider who was a gender therapist, still practices, 2 blocks from my apartment. And after 7 visits of paying him from the money I was able to scrounge up from my parents and allowance at the age of 15, 16, my 7th visit, he said, "Wonderful, if you take testosterone, your vagina will fall out." And I don't know if any of you, that's not possible. But as a 15-year-old person desperate to try to find education, nothing online, you're paying a medical professional to tell you what is going on. I just wanted to learn. So knowing that he still practices and that misinformation is still out there is bonkers. So the Big Book of All Things Queer evolved from what was a little pamphlet to the high schoolers at Cedar Crest High School in the GSA there into people, medical professionals who are inclusive and educated, coming and being like, "Oh my gosh, I want to learn more." And it evolved from community input sharing, "Oh, I really need to know where to, you ask for a short haircut. As a girl, you're going to get a pixie cut. You're not going to get anything like a masculine cut. Where do I go for a haircut? Where do I go for," it's just
Tailoring.
it's 3 pages of a table of contents that evolves with community input, and it's a living document. Community education that is transparent should be easily accessed by our community over here on the east side especially. And so this is a big book of all things queer that is east side specific resources that are personally vetted. Every individual, provider, resource, group in here are people who I have talked with to make sure that it's not someone just saying, "Yes, I'm safe." It has community input to back that. And so the QR code will always go to the up-to-date live version on our website. It's 3.5 years old at this point, and is a labor of love. Thank you.
if I can add on to that, a huge part of it as well, for a lot of queer youth who are looking for doctors, this has been an incredible book. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people who said, "Thank you so much. You've saved me thousands of dollars." Because one of the things that Axel and I went through is, in the pursuit of gender-affirming care, going to doctors and paying them, and then them saying, "So what is trans?" And you sitting there and explaining, well, I'm looking for you to prescribe me hormones so I can begin transitioning. And they go, "Oh, no, we don't do that, but we will charge you for this visit." And we did that constantly. There were so many doctors that the entire visit was us educating them for them to go, "Cool, thanks, bye." And so this is a book where you can feel assured that if you go to one of these doctors, they're going to give you actual medical care. That the cost of healthcare is so extensive and it's so hard and inaccessible for so many people, especially if you don't have healthcare. If you're not on your parents' healthcare, your work doesn't provide healthcare. Healthcare is a luxury that very few can afford, and you cannot afford to go to someone and teach them and pay them to teach them and still get nothing in return. So the Big Book of All Things Queer, every resource in that is created and put in there to help support people. It also has a lot of terminology, so if you have any questions about what does mean, it might be in there. And if it's not in there, feel free to reach out and ask us, and we will let you know, and we will include it in there, because we want to make sure that this is an East Side specific resource book, but it's also an educational resource book.
So I'd like to talk about also our website and a few other things that we have going on. So first of all, that book, I just want to mention, probably helped save me too. It's a big thing to a lot of people, and I have a lot to thank these people for, so I joined them. And now they have to put up with me all the time. But that aside, our website we just totally redid, and because we found out like information, resources, one of the things that we do is we throw events all year round so people can come together, feel safe, connect with their community, know that they are valued and cared for. And that's amazing. But we had a hard time like organizing all that or making it known. We post to social media, we have Facebook groups, but really we found like getting the word out, our website became one of the central hubs for that. And so we invested some real time and effort. We're all volunteers, but we figured out what goes into good website design, that sort of thing. And so not only can you find out what's going on, we have an incredible newsletter we put out once a month. And really it became access to information. And one of the things we're starting to do is like realize and work with other partners and highlight their events. And it's by doing that that instead of disparate little pockets of community, we're starting to become more community. I mean, just the number of Pride events this year compared to like what's been in the last couple of years is astounding. So one of the things I want to point out also is, let's see here, I can't read my own handwriting or that small. So we have like a couple other things. We have a queer business directory. So we're trying to uplift small business and they get involved. And it's really cool to see them also give back. And, you know, so we're going to have an incredible number of vendors at Redmond Pride this year when we throw that event. It's been really cool just as we go to the different Pride events, seeing all the new entrepreneurs coming around. You know, people as they age out of school and they start to like see and get ideas and get creative, how do they get those ideas started? One of the things we're even starting to think about is like, how else can we get involved with small business, right? How can we help people that, and in the queer community, where can I get an accepting job? Where can I like, how do I, like, I have some neurospiciness, how can I possibly find a place that's good for that? And so like, those are things we're starting to hear more and more about and think about, and not just events for like getting together and having fun. Like we have this, we have events for everything. We're going hot air ballooning soon. I mean, there's just other amazing things. Like we have dinner and eat and get-togethers and for everything you possibly imagine, and for all age groups. And we're finding that queer isn't one group of people. It's anybody that, you know, doesn't identify with this certain idea that society has said is the only way. And And also, how do you make that safe? How do you make it safe to explore? And it's really cool to see such an interesting group of people from different organizations or walks of life. And thank you all for coming. And I just want to point that, like, the more and more you speak up, we also know about more and more resources that are needed out. We also have sections inside the Big Book of All Things Queer, like, what if you have queer family members? You know, and like, and I think there's more to do there. And that's why it's a living document. And I just want to say it takes feedback from people like you to give us, what do you all need? You know, we're all in this together. It's not just a small group of people struggling to survive. It takes an entire community. But we have amazing abilities as well, and creativity and livelihood and stories to share. And one of my favorite things I've been involved with was the Duval Art Wall. And it's a long story, but to make it short, it took about 11 months to convince the city council to put up this new art installation. And then it saw the community come together and go behind that, and then put some of the voices of that community up on our website and highlight the struggles people have had, and also how important and meaningful things like this is. That's what community is all about, right? How do we come together, love and support each other? What resources and needs do we have, and how can we bring those together? And it's not just the queer community, it's everybody, right? We all have very similar needs. And so sometimes they're a little bit more specialized. And so who can help you with that? And identifying that, that's one of the things we're all about. And it's really cool to see other organizations doing that too, and lifting each other up. And I just want to say I'm grateful to be a member of that. And it's cool to see the interest and the desire from everybody too. So thank you.
Thank you. I love that your growth is dependent on feedback that you receive from the community. So if we sit here silent, they're not going to be able to learn from things and grow their businesses and grow their knowledge, so they can modify things that might need to happen to a resource as wonderful as this. Okay. I'm not going to jump over your slides where we talk on bullet points, because healthcare is going to be a big topic. Before we move on to those specific slides, I'm going to have them hand over the mic. Let's get a little closer to home here in Issaquah. So if you aren't aware, there is a student group that exists within the high school. It's called Saga. And we have the very great pleasure of having one of their leads, KC, join us, and Summer as a supporting parent. So I'd like her to just touch on some of these bullet points and share a little bit about the organization. If you have not heard about it, I hope at some level you have. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Casey, as I introduced myself earlier. So Saga Club, the Sexuality and Gender Alliance Club, started years before I even came to Issaquah High School. And in fact, we have a picture of some of our older board directors in the bottom right corner. I don't even know them. I think I've spoken to them once over text message, because they've long graduated before I even showed up. So this club has been going on for years at the Issaquah building, and it's really beautiful. We run all sorts of donation groups. We've donated to the Lambert House. We've donated to the Garage, the Trevor Project, and we continue to work to make as many safe spaces as possible, especially in our high school with how many students. There's over 3,000 students at Issaquah High School. Yeah, it's a very large student body, and I'd say in every 5 students, there's at least 2 that identify other than cis and straight. Because this is Issaquah, it's a very welcoming area. And not only do we run donations, we have teach-in nights. We've been meeting every Thursday for the past school year to teach about our history of things like the Stonewall riots or Harvey Milk. We've been teaching about as many people, icons, events that we possibly can. And it's not just teaching, it's also creating a safe space, because Issaquah High School, while there are many students who are very welcoming and kind, there are still discriminating events that happen there. Myself, I've been victim to several of these events, but because of these events, I have always pushed myself to make sure that, like when I was in freshman year, I was shocked to find that Saga Club was such a big club, because in middle school we had a GSA, but I'd say there was a total of 5 students there, maybe, and then there's 3 teachers in that classroom. Versus Saga Club, when I first walked in my freshman year, there was at least 10 students, 1 teacher, and the students ran the whole show. And it's still like that to this day. We run everything, and we organize everything. And having this safe space where I, as a young 15-year-old, could sit there and express, I think we should do this for our community at this school. I think we should do this to help the Issaquah community, and be listened to and to actually do something with these opinions. I think it's something we need to share with as many people as possible. And we've been working endlessly all year round. This is my first year on the board. And we've just been pushing and pushing, because while we always have supporting teachers, there are events where we don't have all the support. Like, there's only 1 gender-neutral bathroom in our entire school, and that's in the health room. And it's only 1 stall, and then we have I think there's at least 10 across the entire school, and we have the extra space for these gender-neutral bathrooms, because I'd say about 30% of our school does not identify as male or female. So it's things like this that we push for advocacy for people who aren't expressive enough, who aren't loud enough, and we really try to just share our safe space. And like things like this past finals week at Issaquah High School, we create safe spaces for people who just want somewhere to sit and relax, someone who just wants to maybe sit in the corner and read, or maybe just talk to someone. We provide that for our high school.
Thank you. Let me jump around a little bit, because I wanted to talk about this. You know, there's verbiage in the school about transgender students, about how they're supported, and I brought this up because I wanted you to be aware of that. I think there's a lot of formality in these words when I read through them. It's just to ensure that the school is covered at some level. But my direct question to, when I told Casey and Summer that I'm going to bring this up, but I want you to dissect it. So I'm glad that they have the words in there, but is there anything that's going on at Issaquah High School that you feel needs more support, or just needs to be brought forward? Are you feeling the support that you need? Is the support that you're receiving fair? Is there anything that you wanted to share with us as a group?
One of my earlier points was, of course, gender-neutral bathrooms. There's only 1 in our entire school, and a lot of gender nonconforming students do not feel comfortable whatsoever using the normal bathrooms, because from the pandemic, me and the Saga Club members have noticed a lot of homophobia has stemmed from younger students. One thing we noticed last year was that a lot of the incoming freshmen were a lot more expressive in their distaste for our club's existence, and so of course that translated to other queer students who just don't want to use the bathroom at school at all. There's people who I've talked to who will come and tell me, I haven't used the bathroom at our school once in the past month. Some people leave the school to use bathrooms because they don't feel safe. And then it's also with PE teachers. There's some teachers who don't provide safe spaces. There are, of course, so many teachers at our high school who are so kind and welcoming, and we have several teachers in our school have stickers on their front doors that have "this is a safe space" on them, and it's beautiful. But there's also teachers at our school who I don't think I can name one student who feels comfortable talking to them who is queer at all. And it's just things like this that make me nervous. I'm turning 18 this year. I'm going to be a senior. And as one of the older kids in our community at Issaquah High School, I just really feel the need to fight and protect these younger students who are 14 and 15 and still discovering who they are. I'm still discovering my own identity. So.
How do you escalate an issue? Because I know you have a faculty sponsor that oversees
Yes.
the Saga Club, and
Yeah, we have Miss Henderson. She is probably one of the most amazing teachers at Issaquah High School. She helps run our theater department. She has had several LGBTQ-centered plays be done at Issaquah High School, like She Kills Monsters, and we've had, there was another one.
Queer Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, they had Romeo and Juliet as both females, and there's been several others that she helps run all this stuff, and she helps Saga Club by being the faculty member who helps us organize everything as well. Yeah, she's been really amazing for the last several years.
Wonderful. Okay. And then if there's an opportunity, I suspect, because I know there's a board that exists, so say one of the students came up to Mrs. Henderson and said, we have this issue, like let's start with the bathrooms. So why is that slow to move forward? It's something that needs to go up the chain of command, probably up to the school board to consider. And I know knowing a school board member in person, it just isn't Issaquah, right? That's in the school district. It's others. So there has to be some sort of consensus. If they're going to apply a specific policy to one high school, it needs to be applicable to the others, like Skyline up at the Hill. So it's something that has to go through a certain process. But thank you for sharing that. Summer, did you have anything to add?
I have my own personal experience, again, living in the blood reddest, tiniest town in Indiana, growing up a queer person myself. I got the experience with Ryan White, who, I knew, I was friends with. And then it just, everything formed, watching the world going by and then watching how it was happening in this little area that I grew up, which I always think that things that happen out here, where I lived in these tiny little like flyover state towns, it's about a decade behind. So you'll hear about these advancements, you'll hear about these improvements to schools and how it's getting easier in certain ways, and you don't see it. It just doesn't reach those small towns, but you know that it's out there, and it gave hope growing up. And let's see. I was pregnant with my daughter in 2006, and I apologize for this in advance. It sounds like one of those things that people say, so everyone will go, "Oh, she's one." No, but I remember being pregnant with her and burst into tears out of nowhere, which was so common when I was pregnant with her, just anything. And I remember saying, if there is a queer baby soul out there, send it to me, because I will take care of it, because I didn't have that. And I literally conjured her into existence is what I think. And she's magical. She is just, God, I love you so much. And it's been incredible, because when she was 9, same-sex marriage was legalized, which our town, oh shoot, what was she? The lady next door. Yeah. The cop's wife next door. Yeah. What was she? I have no idea. She's a person that works for the city and controls marriage licenses and controls elections. Clerk, thank you. Whoever said that, thank you. She was the one that was suing in the Supreme Court case. So, literally our neighbor next door, married to a sheriff's lieutenant, and extremely not hip with our kind of people. And it was incredible. I have all these weird ties to all these big things, but she was the first person ordered that she had to issue gay marriage licenses. And it was wild, but boy, did it affect the rest of the town in a very negative way. So that's it. These are the things that have kind of formed me, and just wanting to make sure that if there's a fight, that they are not able to fight on their own, or if they just don't, I don't know how to say it. I just want to be supportive to my daughter,
to other kids that need it. I'm always
Yeah.
behind the scenes to fight, but I mean,
I think that's what they ask for most, is just to have that support, for
yeah,
sure, and
so
have you
that's
present,
yeah.
so.
I've been the here. I will give you a hug and talk
Okay.
to Casey.
Yeah,
All right.
Summer's always been very
Wonderful.
Summer's always been very supportive of me. I met her daughter back in 5th grade, I think, and of course my parents have always been there for me, but it was like having an extra aunt that was always there as someone I could come to as a older queer person for advice, for someone I could reach out to. It was always helpful.
That's really nice to hear. I think we all have different, if you ask me, I'd have my own story, and if you ask the others on the stage, the path might not have been easier, so you're
Yeah,
blessed.
absolutely. Growing up in this area definitely was, I can say I had a very different experience than Summer growing up.
Yeah, tells us a
Yeah.
lot about the wonderful community that we live in. Okay, I'm going to move us forward. Yes, one more
quick,
comment, real quick. I got to nudge us along.
No. We're talking about the environment. You're making so much progress with the school, and you're fighting so hard, and the good fight, and it's incredible. But just today, we were at the gas station that kids go to, the Shell station, that when they leave for lunch, that's the place everybody goes. And today there was a big stack of, I don't know if everybody knows what this, the Epoch Times. It's a extremely far right, like conspiracy theory, QAnon paper, and it was just headline the most transphobic stuff. And then the little one, like the little side articles, just bigotry and hate and fear mongering, and it's right there on the counter next to the register. So these kids that are going there on lunch, I just learned this is what they're seeing. That is what is being presented to them. So while they're working on building safe places and security at the school, literally their surroundings are starting to like close in, and I mean that's the scariest thing in the world to me, that's just right there.
Yeah.
But so that's the kind of thing I'm wanting to push against.
Yeah, that's not good.
I'm done.
Thank you. Okay, I want to pause us for questions. Was there anything, who's monitoring the bowl? Is there a question that I can bring forward? Yes, if you're comfortable.
So call me not a touch boomer, but you were throwing out some numbers that absolutely bleached my eyebrows. 30% of your school does not identify as male or female?
At least around there. I think I have maybe 3 friends who are all cis.
That is phenomenal numbers.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I just want to know where those numbers came from.
Literally, just by looking around the school. Like, I can walk in and at Issaquah High School, with LGBTQ, it is very much a look that you can identify with.
Friend.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
and you'll turn to your right and see the football guys and think they're all pretty normal, and you'll ask them all, because I'm friends with these football guys, and they're all cisgender. None of them are gay. None of them identify that way. Versus you'll turn to your left and see the theater kids. I think there's maybe 2 people in our theater group today that are not gay. So just by I actually did this myself. I just by like interviewing people, it is a large number that is queer identifying at Issaquah High School. And it's other schools too. I'm friends with people at Liberty High School, at Newport High School, and Bellevue School District. There are large queer communities that I've talked to them that don't like feel comfortable sometimes with other teachers, or they'll come to places like Saga Club or GSA clubs for these safe spaces to relax, just let off that I need to sit here and just mask myself away, just sit perfect T-shoulders until I can enter a safe space of my house or my room or Saga Club.
Yeah, because the power of numbers and data in affecting change is immeasurable. So the more that you know, the more you can push. So that's
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I know. Even with a single non-gender bathroom in our school, I know 5 students who refuse to change in the gendered locker rooms because, of course, even as like a feminine presenting person myself, it is uncomfortable to just take off your shirt in front of a bunch of other girls and just be there in your underwear. And when you have struggles with your gender, that makes it 1,000 times more difficult. And I know so many non-binary or gender fluid students who go to that bathroom that's on the other side of the school in the health room, change, they leave their stuff there in the corner and hope it doesn't get stolen. And then they run back to make PE 5 minutes late every day. And just because they don't feel comfortable whatsoever, like at all. Yeah. And even at the middle school across the street, at Issaquah Middle School, I wasn't super involved with the queer community there, but mostly because there wasn't much of a queer presence at Issaquah Middle School when I went there. I don't think the teachers allowed that type of thing, so they had to, try and hide in a bathroom stall and change and be as quick as possible.
Actually, your table, the middle school table, the baby queer table.
Yeah, no, we definitely had, I had a kind of a community of people who hadn't come out yet, because again, we were that young kind of preteen age, and they all kind of were like figuring things out together and discovering together.
At one of the curriculum nights, I had a teacher come up to me. Oh my gosh, this sounds like one of the Donald Trump things. Like, and they were in tears, but the teacher was literally tearing up because my daughter and Caden, you sat at that table too. There were kids that, as you said, there was like 5 members of the GSA in middle school because they just weren't comfortable doing that. And this teacher told me that they believed that my daughter had created this magic table where people who didn't feel, they felt othered. And they would go and sit at this table and find all of these friends, and everyone, you guys are so confident and so, like, I am who I am, I'm changing, I'm adapting, I'm figuring myself out, but I am who I am. God, I love you guys so much, you guys are the best kids. And the teacher said that because of my daughter's table, that people were coming out. People were going and talking to the teachers more. People were opening up and identifying as themselves. And they said that they had hardly anybody ever in the GSA, but my daughter's table was the come as you are or learn who you are. And the teacher was literally tearing up, and it just made me so happy that they had that support, that there was a teacher watching and encouraging and thanking my daughter for, having such a great, and you too, because you were there. You were the table.
Wonderful.
My daughter and
I
Peyton
was
and
there, yeah.
the magic baby
Thank
gay
you.
table. So.
All right. We have a very quiet audience here. Are there any questions anybody might have? We've thrown a lot of topics your way. Is there anything that we need to elaborate on before I jump into this topic on the board? And I'm going to have my Pride Across the Bridge folks help me with this. Yes, Kelly.
I just have a question about the bathrooms. I know that my kids went to Skyline and they're long gone, and it was a hot topic then for for the youth, really, for more than my son isn't gender anything, but he was very active in it. And I'm just curious as to what precisely the school district says, and if you don't know, they are, I just want to say this, they are going out for a bond right now in the fall. What that means is they're going to ask us to pay more money to build buildings and to fix buildings. That's what it means. And so if there was ever an opportunity to fund gender-neutral bathrooms, it is right now. And I would be willing to help you guys figure out, because if you just get together with each group in the high schools and you figure out, you could give numbers for the number of kids who are not identifying, the school district may actually already have it. I'm going to try to find that out for you because I can do that.
I would love that, yes.
In your slide, you have the one that has the verbatim rule of what it is, and it absolutely backs that up.
That should be in their planning.
Absolutely, that would be,
The kids have been trying to push for it for at least 10 years.
yes, at least 10 years.
I am here as parent support.
Kaylee, you have a question?
I would make a comment. I was on the bond committee, and gender neutral bathrooms are in the bonds.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Thank you. Question?
Not so much a question, but the issue with the bathrooms. Casey is our youngest of 3, and so there's
my mom.
been issues not having to do with how you identify, but issues with the bathrooms as far as safety and that sort of thing anyway.
Safety for sure,
So,
yes.
Yeah, this is
It's a
an
really
issue,
good
and
point.
I also think the way that you can approach that, that's awesome that it's on the bond, but that you can approach this as well for, and I lost my train of thought here. Never mind, it's gone.
Oh, this is great news. That's part of the bond.
Relatable mood right there.
Yeah. Question in the back? Oh, sorry.
I remember. So, as far as changing, for PE, that's nothing new. And, I recall going to high school and having to change in front of my peers, not being confident in your body anyway.
Exactly.
Regardless, you didn't like this, you didn't like that, what we're inundated with, media, especially now, social media. And so there needs to be, something in place for that, especially when you're so vulnerable when you're changing.
Absolutely.
Anyway, so.
Yeah, and throw in any
That's
kind
across
of
the board.
gender anxiety or just confusion in there, it makes it so much worse. It really, really does.
I'm just making or asking, I suppose. I would assume that fear of
Yes.
people seeing, look, I'm different, I'm wearing a binder, just anything that would make them a target because they don't know how everyone would respond to that.
There are gender nonconforming students who do change in the at least I'm aware of the female locker room who will be wearing a binder or they'll be wearing boxers or something rather than what you'll find in the women's section, and some of these students they'll just not change in there. They'll go into the bathrooms that are across the hallway rather than in the actual locker rooms, and I think a designated gender neutral space, even if it's not as big as the 3-room sized bathroom or locker room that we have for both male and female, even if it's just something for them to change comfortably around people who are like them, it would be huge. It would probably like going back to like anxiety or depression, it would help. It really would. These are like the little things that contribute to queer youth, anxiety, depression, just mental issues in general. These little things really do contribute to helping or negatively affecting students at our schools.
Thank you. Wow. Yes, question in the back.
There is a very large number of people at Issaquah High that are just not comfortable using the school bathrooms.
Yeah.
LGBT or not, a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
Your bathrooms scare me, the stories I hear. I'm not kidding.
Claire?
This question, I'm Claire. This question's more kind of along for the Alicia, this person who's talking about seniors.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot lately. The parish I go to, I'm lucky enough to know some queer seniors. And I was really struck with what you mentioned about financial insecurity due to maybe housing insecurity or job insecurity or just so many transitions, looking for a safer place to build a life, having to rebuild and rebuild. I was really struck with that because I think it crystallized something in my mind based on a few people that I've met. And I guess that really touched me because this is already such a difficult place to make a home financially.
Yep.
And I guess I don't have a question, I guess, and not that I didn't want me to shut any conversation down, but I just, I don't know, I have a really good friend who is not a senior or an elder yet, but, I think I always feel like she's in danger of losing her job. And
And where would they? And the question you have at the table is where would they go when that happens to them?
Right.
Right.
Talk about LGBT seniors getting priced out of their neighborhood.
Heyo. Can you tell we've been married for a long time and I've been doing this work for a hot minute? That's my reaction, the big sigh. Kelly's not wrong, right? We think about Capitol Hill, right? We think about the sort of original neighborhood, which is where the Pride Place building is. It's right there on Broadway between Pike and Pine. If you're familiar with the Neighbors nightclub, they are literally the neighbors. And, right, the building's only about 50% full. And that's because it's not a low-income building, it's an affordable building. And LGBT seniors can't afford to live there. Think about that. The number of seniors who came up in the Capitol Hill area, who came up in these neighborhoods that were considered safe and are now being priced out and pushed further and further out into the county or outside of King County, where it, as Axton has pointed out, it becomes more conservative, it becomes less safe. This isn't just true for Seattle and King County. I'm originally from San Diego, worked with seniors, LGBT seniors down there. We saw the exact same thing happening, right? San Diego is one of the 10 most impossibly expensive cities in the world, in case you didn't know that. I am very disappointed. Bad job, hometown. And the reality of that is that as seniors get pushed out, right, they get pushed out of the neighborhoods that were safe for them. It's like I said before, they go back into the closet. That is just the reality of the experience. I actually got a text from one of my colleagues today who lives in Capitol Hill, and these are younger folks, right, people in their 30s, asking me if I wanted to help start a self-defense series for trans folks because yesterday one of their friends got punched in the face in broad daylight. We, this past week, had one of our seniors attacked in front of the building and pummeled on the ground.
Oh my God.
Like, they are okay. They are very mad about it, and rightfully so. It's the reality that it's not necessarily safe to be older. It's not necessarily safe to be queer, and it's particularly not safe to be older and queer. And if you can't afford to live in a neighborhood where you feel safe, what are you going to do? You're going to stay home. You're going to cut yourself off. A previous job working with LGBT seniors, shortly before I started that position, a member of the community went into a skilled nursing facility. It happens, right? They just had health conditions where they couldn't live independently anymore. And it was a nice place. They, whatever. And their friends said, okay, once you're settled, we really want to come see you. Let us know when a good time is. And he told them, no one can know I'm gay. So when about a year later he passed away, he was completely alone. And that is because if you lose that community, you lose your family. And with LGBT seniors, the fact that there's someone who notices makes a huge difference, right? There's the ability to reach out, to look at the big book and see what's out there, or to call GenPride and get that connection to some kind of resource. And seniors are one of the most overlooked groups within our community, especially in terms of funding. Out of all of the philanthropic grants done in the U.S., less than 4% of it goes toward senior services of any kind. That's nationally. So when you think about LGBT seniors, the number's even smaller, right? So there's there's funding out there, right? Someone who can do some kind of rent support or, think like we saw how that can work during the pandemic. And it hasn't been a priority within senior services within housing more broadly, especially at a federal level. Looking at supporting seniors to stay in their homes financially hasn't been a priority. It hasn't been a priority across the board for any age group, but particularly seniors get overlooked in this regard. I think because in a lot of ways we look at seniors and go, oh, well, they're retired. They're fine. They're settled, right? They've got whatever. And then you look at LGBT seniors who are more likely to be renting, who are less likely to have any kind of retirement funding, who are less likely to have the kind of savings that would allow for a medical emergency. All those kinds of things factor together. And when we know that, as our wonderful colleagues over here pointed out earlier, it's medical care is expensive, right? And when you think about the number of seniors who are deciding between groceries and medication, just broadly, right? And then you add in the fact that it's expensive to live here in this area. All these factors compound that for LGBT seniors, they're particularly vulnerable. And even when they reach out potentially for support, they don't know that the organization that they're reaching out to is going to be affirming and supportive. And kind of like I mentioned earlier, I think that's really where we as community members step in, right? And say, hey, what are we doing to make sure that we're supporting this community? What are we doing to make sure that they are welcome here, and that we're not letting people cut themselves off, right? So you move into a skilled nursing facility, and I, as your neighbor and someone who cares, you say, I don't want anyone to know that I'm gay. Okay, I don't have to out you. I don't have to but you're not alone. Right? I'm going to come visit you on a regular basis. I'm going to hold these folks accountable for how they treat you. Can really, really shift how it is. Because when you talk to, especially long-term care providers, they'll often say, oh, but we don't have any gay folks here. And the reality is they just haven't told you. And so it's about making sure that they're able to change their perspectives as well. That's part of why GenPride does the training that we do and things along those lines. If you're curious about long-term care in particular, Human Rights Council, HRC, in June of 2023 released the Long-Term Care Equality Index. You can find it online. They'll mail you a free printed copy, but the whole thing's available as a PDF online as well. It's fascinating for those of us who are senior services nerds, and really, really informative around what we can be pushing for based on what some incredible communities are already putting together.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to wrap us up. I said we were going to get a 15-minute break, but that didn't happen, so I'm sorry.
Good conversation, though.
I know, we're so into it that we didn't get that chance. I'm gonna have each of you give a closing remark, but I lost my screen again. The whole topic of healthcare is really, really complex, and let me just give you my perspective on what's going on. And if there's anybody in the healthcare arena, any physicians or nurses, you might be aware of what's going on in healthcare. Providers are more aware that care that any individual needs, and I'm learning more and more, there's a lot of focus on the LGBTQ community, that it's a team effort. So there's new programs, and you guys are going to be very interested in this because what's behind all this is funding, okay? Yeah. So and they're starting with Medicare providers at a national level. They realize that in order to give full care to an individual, that it takes more than that ambulatory clinic, or it takes more than that ER clinic up in the Highlands. I'll just give you an example. If a homeless person walks into the ER clinic at Swedish, and the caregiving team needs to follow up care for that individual that walked into the ER, they're going to be calling a community-based organization. And let's just say they made a connection with Plymouth Housing right off of I-90. That was the only place they could send this homeless person to because they didn't know where to send them. Now, if that Medicare provider or Swedish Issaquah were to be reimbursed by CMS, a partnership needs to be created so Plymouth Housing also gets a cut of the pie. It's the same thing for food banks. It's the same thing for Lambert House. It's the same thing for GenPride. It's the same thing for Pride Across the Bridge. So if you are in any way interacting with a healthcare provider to provide care for a patient that they see, there are programs now that you are part of that reimbursement process. So we are actually going to touch on that, Kim, on Tuesday, because I think this is something that's made national headlines, but we're educating our community-based organizations in the city of Issaquah to be aware of this new thinking that they're having on a federal level. And I think, so there's Medicare on a national level, there's Medicaid, so there's folks in Olympia that realizes there needs to be some nuances with this programs as it relates to Washington State, and it's going to trickle down at that level. But I wanted you guys to be aware of that that's how people think these days. It's not just that physician that you see, it's the care team that's outside of their four walls to provide the full care that a patient needs. All right. Okay, I would like each one of you in our last few minutes here, and I'm going to start with our wonderful partners at Pride Across the Bridge, just share one closing comment, anything about your organization, anything that we want to touch on, give you about a minute or two each to just share any thoughts you have, please. Anything that stands out, and then I'm going to ask the audience any questions.
So we have a ton of events coming up. If there's things that you think would be useful or you have ideas, we're always looking for volunteers. Like I think that was said by a couple other organizations. But if you have the dream of making something come true, approach us with ideas. We'd like to hear that too. I think this only works when we all come together, and when you have questions and you have ideas and you have concerns, or you have things that I think like one bathroom for that's 30% is like 1,000 kids. Right? That's just not sustainable. So when we see a need in the community, who's filling it? And I think that means we have to have relationship, we have to hear about it, we have to have ideas in which to solve it with. And then you have to actually solve it, right? And so I think we have some amazing people up here. We're very well connected, or we're getting better connected, but we're not connected with you as well as we could be. And that looks like a lot of different things. We don't want just to hear from queer people. We want to hear from everybody. And the needs go all over the place. And so I just want to say, this is really a group effort. And so we create events to be safe, to be connected, but that's to you as well. And so this event, thank you, Ray, for putting this together, and everybody that was involved in putting this together. It really is beneficial because I think it opens awareness, and that's the first step to any sort of connectivity or problem solving. And so just thank you for that.
I was hoping I'd come up with something in the intervening time. I'd like to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is play. I run our D&D group. I'm running 3 groups. For those who don't know, that means nothing. For those who do, that's a lot of work. Each session of D&D is roughly 4 hours long of me creating a fantasy world. And I wanted to talk about that. We're talking about resources and community and gathering, but I also want to highlight joy and play and embracing our inner child. That for a lot of queer people, we had to put the child in the closet, and they may still be there because we have to focus on our survival and being professional in the workplace. And wherever you can, it doesn't have to be D&D, but if you want to wherever you can, find what brings you joy. And especially if you can do that with other people, and if it's collaborative storytelling or just playing cards, I highly encourage everyone to take the time to find some joy and just embrace that.
Does anyone have any questions? I don't do good with coming up with things off the top of my head, but I'm happy to go off of anything that anyone wants to know more about. I will call on Ray. Okay.
If you're thinking about Pride Across the Bridge's vision, 5 years, 10 years, what does that look like?
Terrifying. World takeover. So it's difficult because of the terrain that we're in. The November election is something that will inevitably happen regardless. Right now, my partner and I are facing what was a 50% rent increase, which is legal, and have very unfortunate concerns about our housing. And so with that, being queer advocates and being pushed out of the King County area, it's hard to focus on what that looks like for ourselves. For Pride Across the Bridge, with a $20,000 a year budget, and all of us being volunteers, it's difficult to have a substantial idea. What we have thanks to Morgan, a big document of dreams that we'd like to see. The East Side needs a physical hub. That would be something that people can come to for a resource, to be that safe space for Rainbow Elders, for queer youth. Venues are something that our community really struggles to access, whether it's accessibility financially or physically, or if that is people with chosen bias that just do not want to work. The amount of times we've had a carrot in front of us of, yes, you can use our venue, but also the question about money, what used to be offered to you for free is now $5,000 after we put that work in. And that's not something that our tiny org can afford. But having a East Side hub would be something that would be absolutely incredible. And we need to make sure that we have suitable staff funding and policies to make sure that it's not just something that goes up but is safe for everybody. Yes.
Just a quick question. If we wanted to get information out about your book, the big book of all things, what would be the best way to do that? To just have a picture of the QR code so people could access that, or?
Do you want to answer
that? Yeah, if you scan the QR code, if you want to send it to someone, they can. That's the one.
Just back here when you're all done.
Or you can find it on our website, prideacrossthebridge.org, and it's always up to date online. I also just wanted to shout out Axton. Axton is in a group of executive directors support group, and they are the only executive director that is not being paid. They put in an enormous amount of time and themselves into this, and last night won an award from the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, along with St. Jude's Hospital. Please pay Axton.
The resource guide is also in not only tattoo and piercing parlors, but every East Side School's nurse, principal, vice principal, GSA advisor, all counselors have access to it in their emails, and if not, they should have it. It is also in local businesses. Not all of the providers that are in the resource guide have it on hand, but there are a lot of them that do, either just out in the waiting room area or accessible online as well. So, and if there's not a place where you're just like, wow, the garage would be a wonderful place to be able to have this resource guide because it serves our community. It's supported with it being a free resource guide. It has a PDF that you're able to download, print it out for places, and just be like, here you go. So that's huge.
It's also at, like, libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Doctor's offices?
As a quick shout out, it is really easy to find on the website. I have referred people that way multiple times, so.
That's great. Okay. Casey, Summer, closing comments?
I'm glad you brought up the election because that's where I was going. I have a nephew in Indiana who is trans, and watching, just the hell that he is going through because of the community, because of the school, because of the political, just assault on everything that he is versus my children out here. And I, as a mom, as, you know, the neighborhood mama duck, I guess, I am terrified, just absolutely terrified. So, again, the epoch time thing, I will never get this out of my mind. It was just the most shocking thing I've ever seen. The kids' gas station that everyone goes to for lunch, epoch times. And all I can say is, please vote. You talked about our amazing mayor. The things that we have because we voted and we did the right thing. We had a school board for a while that was I'm just going to say iffy. And things like that, voting for the school board, getting to know who these people are, because everything starts from the ground up. The kids are doing what they can inside the school, and it doesn't matter if you have kids in the schools. We all need to be doing what we can to make it safe for them outside of the schools as well. So please, please keep those things in mind. Yeah.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah, I'll be voting in the next election. Yeah. Turning 18 in a month. Let's go. And yeah, I just wanted to bring up funding as well. Like, Saga Club, while it is called a club by the high school and the teachers, officially on paper, we are called an organization, which means we do not get funding from the school. Anything we have paid for has come out of our own pockets. Oh, wow. So any donations and everything we work endlessly for. So if we're running donations, we have a Instagram, izzy.saga.club. It's on Instagram. It's izzy.sagaclub.official on Instagram.
So ISSY?
Yeah, ISSY. We post about any donations we're doing, anything we're doing generally on there. So if you ever want to donate to the places we're running donation booths for, we do it often during play season in the winter and in the spring. You will see anything we do on there. So,
is there anything that can be done to have your group reclassified so that you are getting funding?
We actually did that on purpose because often with our funding, the school would kind of put a lock on it. So we would ask for it, and then we wouldn't get it. So that's why we now take it out of our own pockets, because with the classification of being a club, we weren't allowed to do that. So it's difficult, and I'm pretty sure it's like our club and like 2 other clubs that are also like similar to Saga Club, like Care Club does a lot of protesting, and for like Palestine or Black Lives Matter, they had that issue as well, and they still have that issue. So just if we're doing donations, please look online. We're there pretty often. Oh, yeah.
So I wish I was that cool when I was in high school. So on the GenPride side of things, I'm to get the shout out with this one too. So there's an intergenerational Grand Marshal contingent for the Seattle Pride Parade on June 30th. Guess who's in the lead? We are looking for folks to walk with us. GenPride is looking for seniors in particular, so folks 50 and older. We are going to have 12 golf carts. It's so cool. We're going to have 8 6-person golf carts and 4 4-person golf carts. They're going to be so sparkly. We're going to decorate them just like that's our professional career. And so that means if you know someone who you think would really want to be in the parade, who, this is their hit.
I am happy to drive for the youths.
Well,
all seniors.
The golf carts are all seniors because we want our special place.
Yes.
We started it. We're going to stay at the front. So yeah, it's like a thing. But that means that if there are seniors that you know who might not otherwise be able to participate, please, all of my brochures went to a health fair this morning, so I don't have any. But I do have my business card. So if that's something that you're interested in, please talk to me afterward. I would love to give you my card. We can see about getting them signed up for walking in the parade. We may not have golf carts every year that we're in the parade, and so we want to make sure that this is an opportunity for the folks who started it, who led the way, to lead the way again.
Find the group, the parade time.
Yeah, well, if you sign up, you get all the details. But it is June 30th in the morning on 4th. It ends at Seattle Center.
had one question, I guess, for yourself and for the whole panel. Are any of these clubs officially like nonprofit organizations?
We are a 501c3, yeah.
The reason I ask is I play a lot of sports, and a lot of the times we do pub crawls throughout the year, and what we'd like to do with all of my friends who are either IT or Amazon or Microsoft, we like to pick a nonprofit, and we'll collect money, and we'll talk with the mayor.
I have my business card. I'm just saying.
And so it'd just be nice to know which ones are, the 501c3, so I can say, hey guys, let's pick this group this round. And so
I can say that all three of us, so Pride Across the Bridge, GenPride, and Lambert House, we are all official 501c3s. There will be cards exchanged. It's going to be a good time. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dad.
On the note of the Pride Parade, so I think Camp Tentry, Seattle Public Schools, Lambert House were all part of the intergenerational contingent as well. Lambert House has a youth and family pride brunch that morning before the parade at 8:30 a.m. I'm usually not awake, but I'll do it for pancakes. We are doing that at St. Mark's on 10th Avenue East, which will also house our temporary drop-in center because we received funding to renovate our building that we own on 15th Avenue. So we're going to introduce youth and families to that space before the parade as part of brunch, and we move over a couple weeks later in July. But we'll be getting a new basement and foundation, I think about 43% more youth programming space. It won't flood anymore, like up to my knees where I need to go down with buckets. So we're it's a big project. We're looking forward to the outcome of that. But yeah, Youth and Family Pride Brunch, 8:30 in the morning before the parade with Lambert House. And then we'll hopefully be able to take the Metro 49 downtown to line up for the parade if it's not full.
Okay. Before I give a big thanks to this group, any other questions from anyone? You're welcome to ask.
Were there any in the bowl?
No. Were there any in the bowl? You guys are so.
We got a head shake from the back.
Oh, no, okay, no problem. Well, I'm gonna close this out. First and foremost, Brandon, Lisa, Casey, Summer, Axton, James, Morgan, thank you for being here, for coming out here to spend some time with our community, for educating us on the wonderful work that you do, for sharing personal stories, personal thoughts. I know I've learned a lot from listening to you and getting to know each of you individually over the past month. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank our sponsor, the Garage and the City, for helping us put on this event. And lastly, for those of you who are here, I just want to thank you for your time and your presence, for hearing what we had to share with you on this important month, and for celebrating part of this Pride Month with us. If you have any questions for the panelists or myself, we are here, so you're welcome to come up.
Also, a huge round of applause for Ray for organizing all of this and for his incredible slides.
Those slides wouldn't exist without you guys, so thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody. Please ask questions if you have.